Hey everybody, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the quiz that you guys just took on greatest common factor, least common multiple, and long division. Okay, so the very first problem that you had was, let's see, problem number 4. Find the greatest common factor of 24 and 96. Well, first of all, remember a factor is a number that goes into the other number evenly. So it's the largest number that divides evenly into 24 and 96. Okay, and I'm going to use the sled method for this problem because if I were to list all the factors of 24 and 96, that's going to take some time. There are a lot of factors. So the sled is what I'm going to use. So again, you can pull out any factor that they have in common. I see they're both even, so they're divisible by 2. I know they're divisible by 3 and 4 or 6. I also know that they're both divisible by 12. So I'm going to divide out the number 12. Okay, remember the sled is like an upside down division sign. So then 12 goes into 24 2 times, and 12 can go into 96 8 times. Okay, when we look at the numbers at the bottom, 2 and 8, they still have a common factor of 2. So I'm going to draw another sled and divide out the number 2. 2 goes into 2 1 time, and 2 can go into 8 4 times. I'm going to stop here because 1 and 4 only have a common factor of 1. And for my GCF, remember, is what's on the left. Okay, so 12 times 2 is 24. So the greatest common factor of 24 and 96 is 24. Okay, then the next problem asks about the LCM of 16 and 28. So let's take a look. Again, I'm going to use the sled method. So I know that these are both even, so they're divisible by 2. I could use that. I do see that they're also divisible by 4, but I'm just going to start with 2. Doesn't matter, remember, either factor you start with will get you the same answer in the end. 2 goes into 16 8 times, and 2 goes into 28 14 times. Alright, 8 and 14 have another common factor of 2, so I'll divide that out. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 14 7 times. Okay, I'm going to stop here because the numbers at the bottom only have a common factor of 1, and of course if I divide by 1, it doesn't change the value. So for greatest common factor, remember we multiply what's on the left. But for least common multiple, we multiply everything outside the sled and it makes a little L shape. Okay? That's backwards for y'all, isn't it? Yeah, it makes an L shape. Alright, so we're going to multiply all of these values together. So I have 2 times 4 times 7. And when I multiply that out, let's see, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And then 16 times 7, if I multiply that out, would give me 112. Alright, so 112 is our least common multiple of 16 and 28. Alright, the next problem. And actually, we use the same problem for problems 6, 7, and 8. Alright, so for a soccer camp, 18 coaches and 63 players will be split into equal groups. Each group must have the same number of players and the same number of coaches. Alright, so this question asks, what is the maximum number of groups that can be formed? Alright, so remember, there's 2 ways we talked about as far as how you can determine whether a problem is about GCF or LCM. The easiest way is looking for keywords that indicate greatest or least. And in the question it says the maximum number. Well, maximum means greatest, so it's a greatest common factor problem. Another way you can also look at it though is grouping versus like repetition. And in this case, we're splitting these into groups. Okay, so that's another reason that we know it's greatest common factor. So we're going to take a look at finding the greatest common factor of 18 and 63. Again, I'm going to use the sled method. And since it's a word problem, I went ahead and just like labeled. And so I know the 18 represents the coaches, 63 represents the players. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Alright, so 18 and 63, I know they both have a common factor of, let's say 9. Could have used 3, but the larger the factor, the quicker you get your answer. Alright, 9 goes into 18 twice, and 9 goes into 63 7 times. Now 2 and 7 don't have any other common factors, so I'm going to stop right there. Alright, and the greatest common factor, remember GCF is on the left. I only have one number, so that answer is 9. So that means the largest number of groups I can form would be 9. So that's the answer for this one. Okay, but then the second 2 problems, or the second and third, I guess, sometimes can be a little I guess, tricky. People often get them mixed up. So what I recommend is going back to the problem to see what makes sense. So it asks on number 7, how many coaches will be in each group? All right, well guys, look, there's 18 coaches. And if we're splitting them up onto 9 different teams, 18 divided by 9 gives us 2 coaches per group or per team. And then for number 8, how many players are in each group? Well, if I have 63 players and I'm splitting them up into 9 teams, 63 divided by 9 gives me 7 players per team. All right, the next set of problems, okay? So this problem will be used for 9, 10, and 11. It says 2 cruise ships set sail from Miami on the same day. The Disney cruise makes a round trip every 12 days and Carnival cruise makes a round trip every 10 days. Both ships left from Miami today. Alright, so the first part is how many days will it take both ships to be back in Miami again at the same time? So in this problem, I don't really see an obvious keyword that indicates either greatest or least. So this is a case where I would really need to think about, okay, am I splitting things up or am I multiplying or repeating something? And if these cruise ships are going every 12 days and every 10 days, that involves repetition. They're going over and over again. So that would represent like multiplication, multiple, least common multiple. Okay, so 9, 10, and 11 involve least common multiple. So we'll be finding the LCM of 10 and 12 for problem number 9. Alright, so I'm going to use my sled method. The only factor they have in common besides 1 is 2. Okay, so that's easy peasy. Divide out the number 2. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. I'm going to stop here, and for least common multiply and multiple, I multiply all the numbers on the outside of the sled. And so 2 times 5 times 6. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 6 is 60. So the answer to the first part would be 60. So in 60 days, they would both be back there at the same time again. All right, number 10 says how many trips will the Disney cruise make in that time? Okay, well again, go back to the problem and see what makes sense. If the Disney cruise makes a round trip every 12 days, and it's going to take them 60 days to be back, 60 divided by 12 means it will take them 5 trips. Okay, and then on problem number 11, how many trips will the Carnival cruise make in that time? Okay, so again, if the Carnival cruise makes a round trip every 10 days, okay, and it's going to take 60 days for them to be back in the same place, 60 divided by 10 is 6. Again, a common mistake is people will get these numbers mixed up on these two problems, so just go back to the problem and see what makes sense. Alright, the next problems, 12, I love 12 and 13 because they kind of make you think a bit. So number 12, why aren't you asked to find the least common factor? Well, think about that, okay? 1 is a factor of all numbers, so we don't ask for least common factor because it would always be 1. It's kind of pointless, right? I know somebody answered that there's no such thing as least common factor, but is that really true? No, because again, 1 is a factor of all numbers, so technically it would always be 1. So number 13, why aren't you asked to find greatest common multiple? Okay, well on the multiples, they go on forever and ever and ever and to infinity, so it's literally impossible to get to the greatest multiple that 2 numbers would have in common. Alright, problem number 14 and 15 were related to each other because 14 asked you to solve the problem and 15 asked you to attach a file that would show your work. So when we divide, 15 of course will not go into 4. 15 will go into 48 though, and that'll go 3 times. So I'm going to line up the 3 over the 8. 3 times 15 is 45. Okay, subtract 8 minus 5 is 3. Then I'll bring down the 3. 15 goes into 33 2 times. 2 times 15 is 30. Subtract and we get 3. Bring down the 0. And then 15 goes into 30 twice. Okay, I have nothing else to bring down. I've got a 0 here, so I'm finished. So my quotient was 322. Okay, and then for the last problem on the quiz, there are 286 kids signed up for intramurals. They are being put on teams of 6, and the remaining kids will be junior referees. How many teams will they have, and how many referees? So first of all, if they're being put on teams of 6, and we want to know how many teams there are, that involves division. So we'll divide 286 by 6. So when I divide, 6 goes into 28 4 times. 4 times 6 is 24. Subtract and I get 4. Bring down the 6. And then 6 goes into 46 7 times. 7 times 6 is 42. And I have a remainder of 4. Now, sometimes it would be appropriate to put this in fraction form or in decimal form, but we don't need to based on what this problem is asking. So again, notice our answer is 47 with a remainder of 4. So if we go back to the problem, it said that 286 kids are being signed up and they're being put on teams of 6. The remaining people will be junior referees. So how many teams and how many referees? Well, 286 divided by 6 gave us 47. So there are 47 teams. And then the remainder was 4. And it said the remaining kids will be the junior referees. So there are 4 junior referees. So the answer should have been the second choice here. There were a handful of people who put the first choice instead. But again, go back and see if that really makes sense with the problem. Alright guys, I hope this helped, and I'll see y'all later.